Well, hey, friends, welcome to Q on Q. We're glad you're with us this week. If you tuned in last time, you know we have started a summer series focused on board games. We love to play them in our house, but this isn't about that. It's about the lessons we can take away using the titles of some of the most famous board games as an inspiration. Well, last time it was Connect 4. We talked about four important connections and disconnections we need to make in life. Today, we're going to shift to a game that we own, but we don't necessarily play all the time, but it has a lot of applications to life if you think about it. That game is Jenga. There's a unique kind of tension that comes with playing Jenga. You know the feeling. You carefully slide one block out, hoping the entire tower doesn't collapse in your hands. The structure wobbles, you catch your breath, and for a moment, everything feels incredibly fragile. And yet, piece by piece, the tower grows taller, more unstable, and a little more nerve wracking with every move. In a strange way, Jenga isn't all that different from what many of us experience in life every day. Every one of us is building something. We're stacking experiences, relationships, responsibilities, dreams, and goals literally on top of one another. Some of these pieces feel rock solid, while others feel a little risky. And just like that Jenga tower, sometimes we don't fully recognize how much weight we're carrying until the structure starts to sway. The question isn't whether we're building, because we all are. The question is whether we're building on something strong enough to support the life we're creating. It's easy to believe that only big, dramatic events cause life to collapse, but more often, it's the small, subtle shifts that eventually lead to instability. You know, that one compromise, the neglect, the overlooked choice. One piece at a time, we might unknowingly weaken the very thing we've worked so hard to build. And when the pressure hits, everything can feel like it's teetering. Today, we're going to explore what it means to build a life with intention. We'll talk about the importance of strong foundations, the danger of small unchecked shifts, the daily work of balance, and how to respond when things fall apart. So, whether your tower feels steady right now or a little shaky, it's my hope that this conversation will help you step back, reflect, and make sure you are building on what matters most. Well, before we can really talk about how to build well, we first have to take a step back and ask this question. What is it that we're building on? Like any structure, the higher we go, the more pressure rests on those bottom layers. And while we often focus on what's visible, like career moves and goals and relationships, the real strength of any life comes from what's underneath it all. That's where we begin, with the foundation. When you start a game of Jenga, no one pays much attention to the foundation, at least not at first. The blocks are stacked neatly, perfectly aligned, and the tower feels strong. Everything's in order, and it looks right, and it gives you a good feeling. But as the game goes on, that base becomes everything. Every move up top depends on the stability of those bottom rows. If those lower pieces aren't solid, no amount of careful strategy can prevent the inevitable collapse. In the same way, the foundation we build our lives on often goes unnoticed, that is, until it's tested. In life, our foundation, our root, our bottom layer, is made up of the core values, beliefs, and priorities that shape how we make decisions, how we treat others, how we handle both success and adversity. It's what holds us steady when life's pressures start stacking up. That base is formed by things like integrity, character, honesty, humility, purpose. They're not flashy, they're not attention grabbing, but they do the heavy lifting when the weight of life increases. And without them, even the most impressive accomplishments can feel shaky and fragile. The tricky part is that many of us unintentionally build on shifting ground. We build on things like the approval of others, or achievements, or financial gain, or the next big thing we're chasing. And while those things might give us a temporary sense of stability, they're not anchored deeply enough to withstand the storms that will inevitably come. When circumstances change, and we know they always do, a foundation built on status or success will start to crack under pressure. Strong foundations require intentional work. You see, they're built when we take time to define what matters most to us, rather than being swept along by trends or expectations or the constant pressure to achieve or be something we're not. It means asking questions like, who am I becoming? What do I want my life to stand for? What kind of person am I when no one else is watching? These are some of the deep, sometimes uncomfortable questions that help us build something that lasts. One of the beautiful things about building a solid foundation is that often it happens quietly, in the background of everyday life. Like I said earlier, there's such a great impact from the small decisions, choosing honesty over convenience, kindness over selfishness, patience over frustration, that we anchor ourselves to what's steady and unshakable. We might not see immediate results, and sometimes that can be frustrating, but these choices create a kind of internal strength that carries us through the unpredictable turns ahead. And in the end, the foundation isn't about avoiding difficulty, it's about being prepared for it. Life will shake the tower at times. Challenges will come. But when we've built on values that endure, we have the steadiness to stand, the strength to adjust, and the ability to keep building no matter what life stacks on top of us. And of course, having a strong foundation is just the beginning. The real challenge comes not just in how we start, but in how we continue to build. We all usually experience a series of smaller choices, little shifts, and slow compromises that begin to weaken what we've built. That's often where we lose our footing. I want you to think back for a moment to something I mentioned earlier and picture what a freshly set up game of Jenga blocks looks like. That tower looks stable, looks comfortable. And as the game continues, one of the most deceptive things about it is how the tower is quietly becoming weaker and how we feel. You slide one small block out, and the structure holds. And so you keep playing, taking small risks, feeling like everything is going to be okay. But eventually, enough minor shifts add up, and suddenly, the tower topples. In life, we often experience the same slow erosion. We might start compromising on things we once prioritized, skipping time to recharge because we're too busy, letting negative habits creep into our daily routines, neglecting our relationships because there's always tomorrow. Every small shift seems harmless at the time, but like tiny cracks in a large water dam, they quietly weaken the overall structure, and by the time the damage becomes obvious, it often feels overwhelming. It's not that any of us set out intending to neglect what matters most. More often, we just get distracted. It might be the busyness of work, the constant digital noise, the pressure to stay productive. All these things create a subtle drift away from the center, and what once felt rock solid starts to feel distant. Because the shifts are so gradual, we rarely recognize how far we've drifted until we feel the tension pulling at the entire structure of our lives. These subtle shifts also affect our self talk. Over time, we can begin to justify decisions that once would have concerned us. We tell ourselves we're just adapting or that it's only temporary. But the reality is, small compromises become patterns, and patterns shape the person we're becoming. A slight realignment here, a bit of neglect there, and we're no longer building in the direction we once intended. The good news is that awareness can be the first step toward correction. If we're willing to pause, evaluate, and be honest with ourselves, we can catch these subtle shifts before they create irreversible damage. It's not about being perfect, never was. The sooner we notice the imbalance, the easier it is to make small, intentional adjustments and restore stability. Scripture reminds us that in many ways, life invites us to practice daily course correction. Listen to these words from Lamentation 3:40. Let us examine our ways and test them, and let us return to the Lord. That's not a call to shame, but to recalibration. After many years of sorrow, Jeremiah declares God's faithfulness, and this verse challenged the people to reflect on their lives. The people had drifted, made compromises, and slowly turned away from God. Their situation was the result of long-term shifts, not one single catastrophic failure. And this verse is a gentle reminder for us as well to regularly pause, reflect, and realign our lives with the deeper purpose God is calling us to. When we stay attentive to these small shifts, we allow His guidance to keep us steady, even when everything around us seems to be pulling in different directions. And while those small shifts can quietly undermine the stability of what we're building, the good news is we're not powerless to stop them. In fact, one of the most powerful tools we have to maintain a strong life is learning how to live in balance. That steady, intentional rhythm that keeps us grounded even as life continues to change and evolve. I think about the game again. I think about as we pull those pieces and we somehow have an awareness of where we need to pull and where we need to balance to keep the structure standing strong. So with all that being said, even with a strong foundation, careful attention to small shifts, and focus on balance, sometimes the tower still falls. Life has a way of surprising us with sudden moments of collapse. Maybe it's a big financial hit, or a loss of a job or a loved one, or a failure that you just can't get over, or a broken relationship, or some unexpected change that you just didn't see coming. The question isn't whether these moments will happen. The question is, how will we react and what will we do after they occur? When the tower crashes down in Jenga, there's that moment of panic or jolt to our system, and then the collective gasp. The tower has fallen. The game is over. So then what next? Do we pack up the game, or do we reset and start again? In life, when everything we've carefully built seems to crumble, we face a similar choice. It's easy to feel defeated, ashamed, maybe even paralyzed in the moment. But collapse doesn't have to be the end. Sometimes it's actually the opportunity for something new, even better, to begin. These moments of falling can actually strip away the illusions we've been living under. A false sense of control, the weight of expectations, the misplaced priorities, they're all exposed when the pieces scatter. And while that exposure can feel painful, it's also deeply freeing. In the ruins, we're given a chance to see what truly matters, and there, we have the opportunity to find God meeting us in ways we never experienced while the tower was still standing. Psalm 34:18 reminds us of this. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Something powerful about knowing God doesn't stand far off when things fall apart. Instead, He draws us near, offering comfort, healing, and an invitation to rebuild, this time with a clearer understanding of what's truly important. Sometimes the collapse is what leads us back to a better foundation. What once seemed like loss can turn into clarity, and what once looked like failure could give birth to growth. When we trust God with broken pieces, He has a way of using them to build something stronger, more beautiful, more resilient than what stood before. We don't have to fear the falling, because we serve a God who specializes in restoration. And at the end of the day, our Jenga tower might be our plans, our achievements, our relationships. That tower, those things, they don't define us. What matters is the one we trust to hold us steady when life shakes and to guide us as we rebuild. Collapse doesn't have to mean defeat. Sometimes it's just the invitation to start again, this time with clearer eyes and a stronger heart. So maybe the real question isn't whether life will wobble or even collapse. Maybe the question is this: what kind of builder will you choose to become next? Every one of us is building something right now, whether it's a family, a career, a business, a dream, or simply the daily habits that make up our lives. The pieces are always moving. They're always shifting. And like the game, they're always stacking. But long after the applause fades or the setbacks sting, we're left with the quiet responsibility to keep building with courage and with wisdom. And maybe that's where the real beauty of life lies. Not in having a perfect tower, but in becoming a person who knows how to build, how to rebuild, and trust the process again and again. You know, it's easy to envy those who seem to have their lives stacked perfectly. But often, we don't see the hidden work of recalibration behind the scenes. That kind of building isn't loud, certainly isn't glamorous, but it's where true strength lives. In the patient pauses, in the quiet prayers, in the moments of asking for wisdom when the next move feels uncertain. And for those willing to surrender their plans to something and someone greater than themselves, that strength becomes unshakable. Maybe right now you feel like your tower is steady. Or maybe your foundation is rocky and you're afraid to make the next move. Or maybe you're standing in the rubble of things that have collapsed around you. No matter where you are, the invitation remains the same. Slow down, examine what you're building on, and ask yourself if the foundation beneath you can hold what you're trying to stack on top. Foundations aren't exciting, but they're what makes everything else possible. And as you face your next move, whether it's a small adjustment or a total reset, don't forget, God is standing very close to the side, waiting to see how you do. And He's already in the center of it all, whispering the wisdom, the peace, and the quiet strength you need to build well. It isn't about stacking as high as you can go. That might seem like the objective of Jenga, but it's not the objective of life. It's about building something that lasts. And maybe, just maybe, the best thing you can do today before making your next move is to pause, breathe, and make sure you are building on what truly matters. Well, I hope what I've shared today has made you think a little bit, perhaps inspired you to do some self-reflection. And we're going to continue this series next time when we talk about checkers. We're going to focus on the small moves and the big shifts, how strategic, simple choices can lead to powerful momentum over time. That's next time. But for now, that is all for this week's Q on Q. And as always, I really do appreciate you tuning in this week. We'll see you back here next time when we'll have more for you on Q.